Welcome to this deep dive. We've got a bunch of sources here. Articles, reports, all fresh, all focused on the latest buzz in the Chinese electric vehicle market.
Yeah, and our job today is basically to cut through all that noise. We're going to unpack the financials, the tech breakthroughs, the business trends that really matter, so you get a clear picture of what's actually happening right now. It's moving fast.
Okay, let's jump right in then. You really can't ignore the recent controversy around BYD. Great Wall Motors chairman Wei Jianjun made that comment about a potential Evergrande of the auto industry. That's quite a statement.
Oh, absolutely. Comparing them to Evergrande, that definitely landed hard. And BYD, specifically Li Yunfei, their brand and PR lead, came back strong and fast. He laid out a whole defense using a ton of financial data from these sources.
Yeah, he didn't mince words, called it malicious smear campaigns, talked about legal action, clearly wanted to shut that narrative down.
Exactly. He aimed to show that comparing BYD to Evergrande just didn't hold water financially. His approach was to put BYD's numbers right next to other big automakers, both global and domestic. He used a few key metrics.
Okay, let's dig into those. The asset liability ratio was 1. BYD's around 70%. Critics might seize on that, but what was Li Yunfei's counter?
Well, the interesting thing is, while 70% might sound a bit high on its own, Li Yunfei apparently pointed out it's really not an outlier. Ford's is 84%, GM 76%, Apple's even 80%, Boeing's over 100%. And closer to home, Geely's 68%, Series 76%.
Okay.
So in that context, 70% doesn't exactly scream unique financial distress. I mean, the ratio generally shows how much debt finances assets, but context is everything, right?
What about the total debt figures? They always sound huge for companies this size.
They do. The absolute number for BYD is over 580 billion yuan. But again, perspective matters. Toyota's total debt, 2.7 trillion yuan. Volkswagen, 3.4 trillion, Ford, 1.7 trillion. Even domestically, SAIC is over 610 billion, Geely over 500 billion.
So large, yes, but comparable to peers and much smaller than some global giants.
Precisely. But here's where Li Yunfei really focused, according to the sources. Interest-bearing debt. Why that specific number?
Yeah, what's the significance there?
Well, it's about the debt that actually costs you money in interest payments and loans, bonds. It's often seen as a better gauge of core financial leverage and debt servicing ability. And BYD's number here, as Li presented it, is way lower than many others. Just 28.6 billion yuan.
Wow, okay.
Compare that to Geely at 86 billion, SAIC at 94.5 billion, then look globally. Toyota, 1.8 trillion yuan, Ford, 1.1 trillion, VW, 1 trillion.
That's a massive difference.
Exactly. His argument is that this metric paints a much healthier picture for BYD and other top Chinese automakers, actually.
So less of the debt that directly impacts your profits via interest. Makes sense. Accounts payable also came up money owed to suppliers. That's got to be high for a manufacturer, right?
It does, yeah. If you're making and buying a lot, you're going to owe a lot to suppliers temporarily. It's just how it works. BYD's is 244 billion yuan. SAIC is similar, 241 billion. Geely, 182 billion. But what Li Yunfei apparently highlighted was accounts payable as a percentage of revenue.
Oh.
BYD's is 31%. That's actually lower than Geely's 32%, SAIC's 38%, and even Great Wall's 39%. So it suggests BYD isn't stretching payments to suppliers any more than its competitors relative to its size.
And do they look at how quickly they actually pay those suppliers, the payment cycle?
They did. The average turnover for accounts and notes payable, Li Yunfei stated BYD's average is 127 days, which is identical to Geely, also 127 days.
Yeah.
And it's quicker than Great Wall at 163 days and SAIC at 164 days.
Interesting. So the data seems to push back against the idea they're financing themselves unusually through suppliers.
That seems to be the clear message they wanted to send with these figures.
And beyond refuting the specific criticisms, he also brought up BYD's overall 2024 performance.
Absolutely. He threw out some big numbers. 777 billion yuan in revenue, 40 billion in net profit, huge R&D spend, significant tax contributions, massive cash reserves. He framed it as BYD's best operating performance in 30 years, basically saying, does this look like a company about to collapse?
So the clear message from BYD, based on these sources, is we're strong, maybe even stronger than some global players, and this Evergrande talk is just noise.
That's exactly the stance. And you have to see it in the wider context, too. Chinese brands dominate their home market, over 60% share now. NEV penetration is over 50%. China is the world's biggest auto exporter for 2 years straight, and brands like BYD are finding success overseas. Their financial defense fits into that bigger picture of growth and strength.
Okay, so while BYD is flexing its financial muscle, others are pushing hard on technology. Let's shift gears to NIO. Our sources talk about their latest assisted driving updates, this NIO World Model or NWM system. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is pretty significant. They're rolling this NWM system out first to over 400,000 vehicles based on their older Banyan platform.
That's a lot of cars getting a major update.
It is. And the newer Cedar models ET9, the new ES6, EC6, ET5 series, they get an architecture update by the end of June. They're using their newer Shenny NX9031 chip for that.
And these updates touch on four main driving scenarios.
Correct. Active safety, highway navigation assistance, urban navigation, and intelligent parking. They're hitting all the key areas.
Let's look at active safety first. What are the standout improvements?
Well, they're focusing on things like better detection if a driver becomes incapacitated, improved collision prevention, and a more universal obstacle recognition, basically making the core safety nets smarter.
Tell me more about that emergency autonomous roadside parking feature. NIO's claiming it's an industry first.
They are. The claim is it's the first system like it in a production car. How it works, supposedly, is if the system detects the driver is unresponsive while 80 is on, it'll gradually slow down.
Okay.
Steer the car into the rightmost emergency lane, turn on the hazard lights, and even call emergency services via SOS. It's a very specific safety feature using autonomous tech.
That could definitely be a lifesaver. What about the obstacle warning system being expanded?
Yeah, this one's aimed at preventing those annoying low-speed scrapes and bumps. It now works better during turns and lane changes, which are tricky spots. And crucially, it recognizes more things, different barriers, guardrails, fences, even curbs, things you might easily hit maneuvering slowly.
Okay, moving from safety to convenience parking. What's new there?
Quite a bit, actually. They've
Right.
got a parking space memory function now. You can save spots you use often, navigate right to them. If your saved spot is taken, it apparently finds alternatives nearby.
And this autonomous parking garage navigation, another claimed industry first. How does that work without maps?
So this is pretty advanced based on what NIO says in the sources. It uses natural language commands and visual understanding. It means the car can supposedly read signs and text inside the garage to figure out where it is and where to go.
Wow, okay.
So it doesn't need preloaded maps or memorized routes. It can find exits, entrances, navigate different levels just by looking around.
That sounds like a real step up. And the fully model-based parking assistance. What does that mean practically?
This is about flexibility. It means the car can see and recognize potential parking spots all around it, 360 degrees, even across an aisle. You can supposedly start the parking process from almost anywhere near the spot, not just perfectly lined up, and it can use the driving lanes, the aisles to maneuver into tight spots over longer distances.
Sort of a see it, click it, park it idea.
Pretty much sums it up. If the car's sensors can see the spot, you should be able to tell it to park there.
And NIO made a point that even cars that are, 3 years old can get these features?
Yeah, the older Banyan platform cars, they highlighted that their initial hardware choices allowed for this kind of significant software upgrade down the line.
That suggests some serious forward planning in their architecture.
It really does. Building in that capability from the start gives owners value over time, which is a smart strategy.
All right, let's pivot again. Let's look at business performance and growth, specifically through the lens of Xiaomi. Their recent Q1 2025 financials give us a peek into their EV journey.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching a tech giant jump into cars. So Q1 2025, their whole smart EV and AI innovation segment brought in 18.6 billion yuan. That's about, 2.6 billion US dollars. And almost all of that 18.1 billion yuan, or $2.5 billion, was from selling the actual EVs.
And deliveries were strong in Q1.
Very strong. 75,869 SU7s delivered just in those 3 months. The sources also mentioned their total cumulative deliveries are now over 258,000.
Okay, good volume. The report also mentioned a pretty healthy gross profit margin for the segment, 23.2%, but there was still an operating loss.
That's right. Despite the positive gross margin on the cars themselves, the overall segment reported an operating loss of 500 million yuan, about 70 million US dollars for Q1.
So they lost money overall. Do we know how much per car that works out to?
Well, if you take the total operating loss and divide by the number of cars delivered in Q1, the source material calculates that out to an average loss of around 6,500 yuan per SU7.
About $900 US dollars per car loss in Q1.
Yeah.
How does that compare to, say, last year? Is that getting better or worse?
Oh, it's getting way better. That's the key context here. Remember, for all of 2024, their EV division lost 6.2 billion yuan on about 137,000 cars. That averaged out to a loss of roughly 45,000 yuan per car last year.
Wow, so like $6,250 loss per car in 2024, down to $900 now. That's a huge improvement.
Massive. Over an 85% reduction in the loss per vehicle in about a year. Shows they're scaling fast.
So why still a loss overall then if the per-car economics are improving so dramatically?
According to Lou Weibing, he's a partner and president at Xiaomi Group, it really boils down to the business still being very young. They just don't have the full scale yet, and they've sunk huge amounts of money up front into building their own factories, developing their own tech. He basically said it's the classic pattern for automakers starting out.
Makes sense. What's the outlook? When do they expect to actually turn a profit in the car division?
Lou Weibing sounded optimistic based on the sources. He expects the losses will keep shrinking as they deliver more cars and those economies of scale really start to bite. With demand looking strong, especially for the higher-end SU7 Ultra, he actually suggested they could hit break-even or maybe even profitability in Q2 2025, so potentially very soon.
And they've got another model coming, the YU7.
Yes, and apparently the initial buzz around it is huge. Lou Weibing mentioned this specifically. He said the market reaction after its initial tech reveal event, measured by people giving contact details, was about 3 times higher than for the SU7 at the same stage.
3 times? That's significant.
It is. He thinks the YU7, which is expected to be an SUV, will appeal to a much wider audience than the SU7 sedan. He sounded very confident about it.
Do we know where it'll sit in the market, price-wise?
The official launch is planned for July this year. The sources mentioned rumors of a starting price around 245,900 yuan. That's about 34,000 US dollars, which, if true, puts it right up against the Tesla Model Y, but potentially undercutting it. The refreshed Model Y starts higher, around 263,500 yuan or $36,600 USD.
So very competitive positioning.
As these Chinese EV makers keep showing this mix of rapid innovation and increasing financial strength, how much pressure does that put on everyone else? On the legacy automakers, on EV startups in the US and Europe? The level of competition and sophistication we're seeing here suggests the global automotive race is only getting tougher and faster.
Great point. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. If you found this interesting, definitely hit subscribe. We'll be back with more deep dives exploring fascinating topics just like this one.